sanitation and home brewing video. Got tons of notes here, and I'll read it all out in order, and yeah, hopefully it's some good information for you guys. And no, it's been good building this little data repository anyway. So here we go. So as an intro, sanitation in home brewing is very important. I've been reading and listening and watching everything sanitizer just a couple months ago for a little while, so I wanted to take the time to show you guys the stuff that I've learned, and hopefully some of you will learn something as well. If not, just a recap, and hope you find it all useful anyway. So anyway, defining the terms. That's an autoclave. We'll get to that. So many homebrewers talk about sterilizing equipment, but really what they mean is sanitizing. So sterilizing, sanitizing. Sterilizing means to kill all life or biologicals. Homebrewers can't really get to the sterilizing stage. They just can't unless they've got something like an autoclave, which is immense heat under immense pressure, and that sterilizes, or very long baking times, because you can sterilize by baking high temperatures for a long amount of time. I mean a long amount of time, and like an ordinary oven. So I mean, feel satisfied with just sanitizing though, as it does actually bring the amount of biologicals left over to kind of a negligent level. So with that said, it's possible to get to the disinfect stage though. That's in between the two. Can sometimes require more handling of the equipment and rinsing, so on and so forth. So the terms are sterilize, so that's 100% effective against biologicals. And then you've got disinfect, which is 99.99% effective. And then you've got sanitize, which is 99.9% effective. These numbers they're not 100% accurate, but they give you a really good guide, and they give you the 3 steps. So those are the steps. So sanitizer myths. Cleaning. Is it a cleaner? No. However, there are some sanitizers that do act as a mild detergent as well. You should use a detergent to clean your equipment, then use a sanitizer on the surfaces. The sanitizer will sanitize those surfaces. You can't really sanitize through dirt. They're just generally not built for breaking down and loosening dirt from the surfaces, so you want to clean it first. But sanitizers are not cleaners. Are they smelly or yucky tasting additives? Well, sanitizers generally do actually have somewhat of an odour to them. However, at their dilutions, they just aren't, they're not really all that odorous. So the raw material, you might be able to smell and taste it, but really when you've diluted it in water or however you're diluting that sanitizer, it's negligent. You don't really need to worry at all. There's no way in hell you're going to be tasting it or smelling it, even once it's been in the fermenter and you've added beer to what's left over, that minute amount. So you don't have to worry about any smells or odours. Does it kill all the bacteria? Well, no. I mean, we just went over the steps, sanitize, disinfect, sterilize. So that kind of gives you some idea of what the deal is. It's basically just an insurance policy to how well you're cleaning. So sanitizing, 99.9% effectiveness. And there's always that small chance that there'll be biologicals left over, like the bacteria and funguses and things like that. So really, it just gets you from here to here in terms of wiping that stuff out and having a truly clean slate on your gear before you go and use it to brew with. So that is that. Right, next step. Do you have to use lots of it, and does it run out quickly? Well, no, not necessarily anyway. Depends how you're using it. A little is a lot, and can be like a C against biologicals. So the amount of sanitizer that you're diluting and popping onto your gear really is truly like a freaking ocean compared to these individual bits of bacteria and fungus and stuff. It's huge. Just follow the directions for your sanitizer for the correct dilution levels. Stick to those levels, and you'll get the most out of your sanitizer, really. Right, next. Woo. Is it expensive and not really needed? Well, sanitizer can cost a bit, but if you use the right amount, it'll be around for quite a long time. Again, check the dilution levels. Make sure you're not using too much. It's a common mistake. So I've found a lot of people do use more than they need to, and really price per sanitation event is actually quite low when you think about it. It's the initial setup of initially getting your sanitizer, I suppose, in bulk or however you do it. That can seem expensive, but over time you're not doing too bad. What else can we say? Yeah, I mean, you kind of need it. You've cleaned your gear. You need the sanitizer. It's gonna clean the surfaces. So there you have it. Well, my experiences with sanitizer, I mostly purchase and use sodium percarbonate, which is an off-the-shelf bottle. It's built up of granules which you add to the water to create your sanitizer. My first brews didn't appear to have infection issues, and that was mainly because I was using the right procedures, which was outlined on the bottle. What else can we say? Well, as you do when you're trying new things, like you're just trying brewing for the first time, you tend to just follow all the instructions because you're nervous and you want to know whether you're doing it right or wrong, really. And so that's exactly what happened. All my first brews, I think all of them were clean. They didn't appear to be infected at all. But further down the track, became a little lazy. And started to sort of do the splish of this, splash of that trick, and that landed me in trouble a couple times actually. Yeah, I've had a few infected beers because I would say I probably wasn't sanitizing properly. What an idiot, really. It's a very important step in the brewing process. So, I always clean really well, but I needed to get back on track in the sanitizing world. I vaguely do remember using that sodium percarbonate. I would fill the sink and I'll just go, yep, that's enough, and I put it away. And some brews were fine, but yeah, some came out infected, and I would put it down to that. Thinking about it now, I know that wasn't enough to add into the solution of water. So now I measure it out. I follow instructions. In fact, I remember what the measurements are. So yeah, it's just a tip for you guys. Anyway, so sodium percarbonate wasn't the issue. I mean, it's a fairly effective product. It does sanitize. The cool thing about it is in water it has hydrogen peroxide that comes out, which decomposes in the water and turns into water and oxygen. So it's kind of the what do you call it? It's kind of the same as some other sanitizers out there. Like you dilute them, and then the active ingredient really comes out and just oxidizes the crap out of the biologicals, or makes the solution acidic and eats away at it that way. I believe it also emits a bit of sodium carbonate, which is a sodium salt of carbonic acid which can soften the water and regulate pH as well, so that's a bonus. So sodium percarbonate is an oxidizing agent, which does the sanitizing work. So there's kind of the activity in it, the oxidizing. I found reports of it being a kind of cleaner too, which was interesting. I didn't really go too much into detail because this is all about sanitizing, but apparently it's used for getting out stains in clothes as well. I saw that, so that's interesting. Oh, we should probably look at some different sanitizers and their properties. So while we're going into detail, let's talk about some other ones. Alcohol. So the contents, you've got methyl alcohol, or ethyl alcohol, or ethanol, or you've got isopropyl alcohol. So there are the three main types, and these ones are probably the most effective, and there's an order to that as well. So let's have a look. So theories tell of alcohol denaturing cell proteins, interfering with the cellular metabolism and destroying membranes. So that's pretty cool. Without water, it actually isn't all that effective, as water is needed in the protein denaturation. It will not kill spores. It will kill viruses though. That's if contacting for at least an hour. Methyl and isopropyl on their own can be toxic to humans, so that's one thing to remember. If enough is ingested. Isopropyl is the most effective alcohol as a sanitizer. Then you've got ethyl at a close second, mind you, and then down the track you've got methyl. Methyl's not really quite that effective. Ethyl is most favoured, but it's also the most expensive. Alcohol can leach away at plastic, so let that be noted, and it can cause a bit of damage over time. So the usage, right? So what you want to do is, if you ever were to try this, it's safe. What you can do is mix 30% water and 70% alcohol. So what you do is you soak your gear for about 5 to 10 minutes in the solution. It could also be sprayed from a bottle, but it must be wet for the contact time to work. So you're not really having to submerge or immerse it in the fluid, it just has to stay wet for that time. You just air / sort of drip dry. Don't have to worry too much if there's too high a concentration, seeing as you'll have alcohol in the beverage as well. That's mainly speaking for ethyl or ethanol. You don't want too much methylated spirits lying around in your beer, or isopropyl. So there you go. Next one is bleach, believe it or not. This is interesting. I've heard that back in the old days people would use bleach, and so I thought, that's interesting, let's look this up, and I found some really cool information. So bleach contains hypochlorous acid, which is chlorine when dissolved in water, sodium hydroxide, which is caustic soda, and yeah, that's it actually. So let's have a look at this one. This sanitizer is out there on the web and has also been recommended by the Star San inventor Charlie Talley. So there you go. And I actually listened to a podcast, and he was just going on about it. He was really enthusiastic about it, and believe it or not, he recommended people use this. So apparently cheaper branded bleach has less sodium hydroxide in it, and that's good, because the lower the amount the better, as it can inhibit the effectiveness of the sanitizer. So there you go. Hypochlorous acid should be at or about 5%, which is 50,000 parts per million. It should be clear with a yellow or slightly green hue, which is best. Cloudy means that it may be a bit too old, so that's how you judge the best bleach to implement. So really, cheap and fresh is good. That's the sum up there. Right, so the usage is 1 ounce of bleach mixed into 5 US gallons of water. Then you add 1 ounce of vinegar. Never add the bleach to the vinegar directly, it causes a reaction and can be harmful, so don't do that. Always add one to water and then add the other one. So with that said, this will make a no-rinse sterilizer and will contribute no flavours or aromas. So there you go. Contact time is only 30 seconds but that is only as long as the pH is at about 5. If you have mixed in too much, you can rinse it, but you must use pre-boiled water to rinse it with, so you don't reinfect your equipment. Only make what you'll use at each sanitation event, as this doesn't actually last all that long, so the shelf life is really bad. But there you go, you can actually use bleach as a sanitizer, believe it or not. Next, iodophore. Iodophore is an iodine complex with a solubilizing agent, titratable iodine apparently. Agents can be a surfactant or pyrovidone, both non-toxic and generally safe, so that's cool. Iodine itself is very safe, so that's cool. What was it? Someone mentioned, or I read something about people saying, oh no, iodine, that's really bad for you, you know, ooh. But apparently we do need it in our diets, so that totally discredits that, so there you go. Right, some info. So, free iodine is released when it's mixed into water, and the main ingredient comes out. Diluted, it will only be good for up to about 60 hours because of the uncertainty of the water quality. By itself, undiluted, it can last up to 20 years, and apparently that has been tested, so that's pretty cool. The product has been proven over time, and we've been used in the dairy industry and overall been in use for about the last 75 years. You can be guaranteed that it's a good product. So, it's been said to have negative effects on people, which is untrue, which we just went over. The product is known to stain, but it doesn't happen quickly, and yeah, as long as you stick to the right amounts used, you're probably not going to get a lot of staining, and it's not bad for your equipment or anything, I wouldn't worry about it. But it does stain, so there you go. So, the usage. The correct dilution is 12.5 parts per million, and that renders a no-rinse sterilizer. That's pretty amazing, 12.5 parts in a million. It's like one guy in, you know, a football stadium or something knocking everyone else out. So using 25 parts per million and will render a disinfectant, and so that would require some rinsing with pre-boiled water. It is generally overused and can have a slight impact on the yeast, so don't use too much. Always diluted in cold water, apparently, and contact time is 2 minutes as long as the equipment stays wet. Again, that's not immersive or submerged time, it just means the equipment has to still be wet while it's dripping or air drying. So 2 minutes and you'll be safe. It does rely on very clean surfaces though, so there you go. Right, next one is the almighty Star San. A lot of people use this out there, a lot of people. I guess it's just well proven by the masses really. So, what does it contain? It contains phosphoric acid. Apparently that's in lots of food beverages. DDBSA, which is dodecylbenzene sulfonic acid, and that is a surfactant used for the bubbling. Used in some toothpaste apparently. I couldn't find a lot more about that, so that's about all I could get. What else does it have in it? Propylene glycol, so that's generally recognised as safe. Same with the phosphoric acid, that's pretty much safe as well, being used in beverages, you know, food. So the propylene glycol is a moistener or softener, so it really just has the 3 main ingredients anyway. So, info about this one. Diluted, it'll last for about 2 to 3 months easily, and it can be reused as long as there are no floaties in the solution. It'll go cloudy only because of the minerals in the water you're using, like hard water. That will not make it less effective. Deionized water would stop that anyway, so it really just needs to be under pH 3.5 and it will keep killing. So there you go. A lot of people out there have sort of argued that, oh, you know, if it goes cloudy it's not effective anymore, but that's untrue. So, the foaming's not an issue either, and it will still kill if the foam contacts the surface, so that's really handy to know. And apparently the yeast actually use some of it as food in the wort. So I don't know, there's a bit of a bonus there as well, almost like a yeast nutrient, I guess. So apparently this formula has been around for about 40 years and was invented by Charlie Talley, the same guy who recommended that bleach. So there you go. The usage is 300 parts per million in water, which is about 1 ounce to 5 US gallons of water. So contact time is officially 1 to 2 minutes and then drained. No rinse sanitizer, sorry, no rinsing involved. Spray application is acceptable, and a lot of people do that, and that's as long as the surface stays wet for at least a minute. So you still have to do that thing. So again, no submerging time, just as long as it stays wet. More than needed, will probably need to be rinsed with pre-boiled water because you don't want to disinfect anything. So another one. That's kind of our main sanitizers out there, I guess you could say. Other things you could do: fermented time before pitching. So yeast. This is not necessarily related to sanitizers in general, but because you cannot be 100% safeguarded, this kind of fits in. Because your water is vulnerable before pitching your yeast, you really need to pitch the yeast as soon as possible. People have left water overnight in the past, including myself, and it has been fine. That time before pitching quite simply allows biologicals and things to populate. But only in small numbers initially. The pitched yeast will actually overwhelm the rogue biologicals and things as it grows and takes over the fermentation. Sort of takes all the food away and uses it for itself, I guess, and just outnumbers really. I learned this by listening to some podcasts about yeast. Yeast is pretty amazing stuff anyway. Pitching is therefore another inhibitor for the biologicals that can turn a brew bad. So there you go. An interesting test you can do actually is when you do your next brew, set aside just a little bit in a bottle. Pitch your yeast in your main vessel or brew, and in that little bottle put an airlock on it and just set that aside without any yeast in it, and count the amount of days before that starts fermenting, and this will show you how clean your processes and things are. Generally, you know, it might start fermenting after like, you know, a week or a few days or something like that. If it's a week, holy crap, your processes are awesome, you're very clean, and you're keeping things very well sanitized. If it's like after a day or two, you might want to check out your processes. This is the experiment that some other people have done, and that's what they've come up with, so there you go. So, to sum up, this is all the stuff you want to keep clean. So, you just can't be 100% sterile in homebrewing. You can't be sterile. It's highly likely that bacteria and wild yeast are right with you there the whole way on brew day, and bottling and kegging day even. You're going to be pretty well safeguarded though if you sanitize, and no matter what products you use, there's always that tiny chance that there's going to be biologicals carried on forward. But that's okay, don't stress. Just know that what you are doing is helping, and do enjoy the fruits of your labour, and you know, yum yum, drink some homebrew. As long as you're following instructions and doing it right, you really don't have to worry. So I hope you found this interesting and useful. There's some cool little facts in there, and yeah, that's about all we have time for at the moment. Enjoy. Cheers.